Hey guys, so today I wanted to do a review on the TikiTaka M16 Elite Leverless controller because it has quickly become my main controller. It's a controller I enjoy a lot, and I actually haven't seen a lot of reviews for this controller. And I think it's a controller that has some very nice features and offers some options that you will find in other sellers, but they do it in a very simple and intuitive way, which is a huge plus when looking at controllers. Um, as you can see here, we have the main controller itself. Obviously, it's an aluminum body. There's some other features I'll talk about later in the video, but the first one I wanted to talk about is the layout. So the layout that you see here is actually not the default layout of the controller. This is a custom layout. It's pretty much my preferred layout. I mean, it's nearly perfect, pretty much as perfect it's gonna get. But the reason I was able to get this layout is because TikiTaka does offer customization for button layouts for a few of their controllers. And they do it in a really nice and intuitive way, like I mentioned before. And I think the best way to do it is to show it to you guys. So before I talk about anything else about the controller, I want to talk about the button layouts. And I'm going to show you guys the process of getting your own custom layout and see, so you can see how easy it is to do so. All right, so now that we're at the TikiTaka homepage, the first page I want to take you to is the customization tab. So here you'll see a few different rules for customizing, but I'll go over these later. I'll summarize them quickly. The first thing I want to point out is that here you see the 3 different models that you can customize. And they'll actually let you know different tech specs for the different models, in terms of size and weight. And the 3 models you have is the Elite wide size, which is the one I own, and it's the same thing as the Elite, except it's just larger, and the R1 controller, which is a brand new model that they just released. But the main part about this customization website is actually down here. So for the sake of this example, I'll just choose the exact model that I went with. And what you'll have here is a browser-based tool that lets you very easily customize your layout. So what you can actually do is grab an individual button and you can drag it to the exact position you want it to be. Of course, there's a few rules that I mentioned before. So the first rule is that all buttons must be within this red border. So you cannot have a button like all the way out here. The buttons must not be overlapping, just so that, it's physically impossible to overlap them. And the third rule is that you can have only up to 17 buttons. So 17 buttons or less. Obviously, this means you can remove a button. I can press the X here, or I can press the X down here for the respective button. What's also nice is that you do have these other options here to customize the layout. So let's say I want to move this button, I don't know, maybe 5 millimeters to the right, sorry, and I want to move it maybe 10 millimeters up. I can do that with exact measurements here. That way, if you want to align things perfectly, you can. You can of course also change the size of the button. You can change it to 30 millimeters. Obviously, I would have to move it out so it doesn't overlap. But the point here is that it's a browser-based tool that allows you to customize layouts super easily. And the other thing, sorry, I wanted to mention is that if you have artwork you want to upload to your controller and have displayed on your controller, you could do so as well. You would just do the upload background here, and you would have to upload some sort of finalized artwork file. So you might have to do something like Photoshop or GIMP to get that artwork to look how you want it to look. But then here you would just upload it and you can, set it in place and resize it a little bit if artwork is something you want on your controller. Of course, you can reset as well. You can press the button to add a button. But in short, this tool is just amazing. Usually when you customize the layout of a controller, you have to do some sort of extra step. If the seller gives you the file to edit the top panel, you would have to take that file into something like Adobe Illustrator or maybe another software. Or maybe you would have to probably pay that sort of controller maker to make the layout for you. But here, pretty much anybody can work with this. Anybody has a browser that can kind of run this. And at the same time, once you're done with your layout, all you have to do is click generate an image. And you end up generating a PNG file. It's a type of file that everybody has worked with before. And when you buy your controller, you just upload that PNG file and they'll make that custom layout happen. That's exactly the process I went through. Which takes me to going to the actual product page for the M16 Elite so that we can see other customization options. So essentially, once you're done with your custom layout, you would go to the product page and you would make other customization options. So the first one is going to be color, but here's also where you would choose size. So there's a reason there's two black colors here. One is for the regular size, and then this one you would select if you want a black controller but the wide size. Same with the purple. And if you choose the regular size, you can also choose the carbon fiber panel, which they show you what it looks like here. In the images, they do show this sort of kind of silverish aluminum that is not offered here. Maybe they do offer it if you send an email to TikiTaka, but I didn't bother asking. I was more interested in the black controller. So that's what I chose. The next option is your compatibility for the platform you're going to be using it on. So you could choose PC if you're only going to choose play on PC, or you could choose PlayStation 5, which will also give you PC compatibility, but it also gives you PS5 compatibility, which is a bit harder to come by. It's you can actually see the price go up by about $30 some when I choose PS5 compatibility. That's just the price of a regular authenticator that they will install for you. And this is actually where I want to go off on a tangent. So if you're experienced with GP2040 and third-party controllers, you probably know that the main way of getting PS5 compatibility is to use an authentication dongle. And that's exactly what this controller does. So if you already own some sort of PS5 authentication dongle or adapter, you could probably get away with buying the PC version. It should be the same PCB, just doesn't have the dongle, and you could either install it or use the adapter yourself. And you could save yourself some money that way. I'm not 100% sure, so I would probably contact TikiTaka beforehand to see if that's the case. I just assume because it's a lot easier to, produce the same PCB over and over again and just not fill in the USB port. That's what they do. But again, ask TikiTaka if you have any concerns. For those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. Just think, am I going to use this on PS5? Am I going to go to local tournaments, or am I going to play on console at home? Choose PS5. If not, you could just save money and choose PC. And the last customization option is going to be your button cap type. So they offer two types. And this is also where you would let them know if you have a custom button layout that you want to upload. But the two types are nylon and ABS. And so nylon is what you'll see in this picture and on my controller as well. It is a 3D printed material, I believe, but it's higher quality. It's not as easy to work with, and it's not as cheap as your standard PLA plastic. And it has a little tiny bit of a texture. They do mention on the website that it's nice if you have like sweaty fingers or something like that. I don't think there's that much texture, but I chose nylon buttons because it was my first time trying them out. I wanted to use this as an opportunity to try them out, and I enjoy them a lot. But if you want sort of standard, really smooth plastic, you could go with ABS. And I believe they also offer multiple colors for the ABS buttons, so you could probably send them a special request with your order to let them know, hey, I would want these colors, and see if they can make it happen. And the last part about the product page before you actually add it to cart is that here's where you would upload your file, your PNG that you downloaded once you made your custom layout. Of course, if you don't want a custom layout, you just want this layout, then you wouldn't upload anything and you wouldn't choose the custom layout option here. And they also do show you, I want to show you guys, they have a page kind of dedicated to showing you the customization level of the controller. So you can look through it and you can see, people here have their artwork. Here's what the purple aluminum version would look like. Here's the other model, the R1A. And you can see, again, the crazy button layouts that people can make. The exact layout you want, you can get it made. You'll probably just have to do some sort of testing, if you want to go for a crazy layout, you'll probably want to test it out, see if you really like it. But it's possible. TikiTaka offers this. They do it in a very, again, intuitive way, and I love it. And on top of that, the controller quality is really nice. And so now I'm going to do an overview of the actual controller, and I'm going to start off with the buttons. As you can see here, I obviously have the nylon button caps that I mentioned before. And I'm going to start off by showing the button individually. So this is an extra button that TikiTaka sent. And the button construction is pretty simple. If I take it apart here, the important part, you do have your button cap and it's currently attached to the switch that I'll show later on. And then the rest of the body is here with the PCB and the hot swap sockets and the little nut to screw on the button. You'll see the buttons also how they're wired when I show the inside of the controller. But to speak about the switch that the buttons actually come with, it's a Gateron style low profile switch. And I believe they call them the Kasumi switches. And so these switches actually obviously do the main work of the button. And they're pretty sensitive. That's the best way I would describe them. They have a good amount of total travel, so you can press the button down a decent amount. But you actually don't have to press it that much to actuate it. It has a pretty short pre-travel. And on top of that, it only has, I believe, 35 grams of actuation force. So those are pretty light. So these switches are the ones that come default with the controller, and at first they felt a little weird. I was used to a bit heavier switch, but over time I've gotten used to them. And it kind of makes sense that they're going for these lighter, more sensitive switches because that's what a lot of the FGC is kind of focusing on right now. But overall, the buttons feel great, honestly. Using the controller doesn't feel bad at all. The buttons are a little bit loud, as you saw in the sound test, but I will probably be modifying them to make them a little bit quieter, maybe lubing the switches, or adding some O-rings to the button caps. I don't know yet, we'll see. But for the rest of the controller, we do have black frosted plexi. At least that's what I think it is. It looks like it has a different look to it as opposed to just clear plexi. And that's a pretty good top surface. I like plexi as a top surface for controllers because it's comfortable. It doesn't get super cold. I will say this kind of material is pretty good at attracting fingerprints, but again, this type of material is also very low maintenance. You can just wipe it down, and worst case scenario, you have to use a little bit of water and soap. But that doesn't really happen too often. Just wiping down the controller after use should leave it looking fine. The rest of the body, obviously on the outside, is aluminum. Obviously, it's the black aluminum. It feels great, makes it feel more premium, makes it feel as well more durable, and it looks really good. So that's a major plus. Moving on, at the top right here, you obviously have the menu buttons. They're pretty sizable buttons. They're pretty comfortable to use. I like that because I've seen some leverless controllers use very sort of small and uncomfortable plastic or metal pegs. So these buttons I kind of like, and the amount of buttons you get here is always going to be default regardless of how many buttons you have on the front panel. And you can't really see it clearly, but at the top left we have the display. So GP2040 allows you to customize that display quite a lot. I find it very useful because it lets me know, you can't really see it, but it lets me know in the top left corner if I am in X input mode, which is ideal for PC, or if I'm PlayStation 5 mode, again for PS5 compatibility. And the display, like I said, it can be customized. So if you want to display some artwork, I know some people like displaying some type of artwork for their favorite game or something like that on the display. You can do that too. The size of the controller, there's really not much to talk about. All you really have all around the controller is this USB-C port at the front and another one on the side here. Both are used to have the same purpose. It's to connect to your console or PC. And it's nice that they include both because if anything happens to one of them, you could just swap to the other one as a backup. Moving on to the back of the controller, the back panel is actually acrylic or plexi as well, whatever you want to call it. It kind of surprised me. Most controller makers opt for a metal back panel, but they probably made this decision because it's easy to work with as well. It keeps the controller as light as possible. Not that the controller is heavy or anything, but it's definitely a thing. And it comes with these two anti-slip pads that you attach yourself, wherever you want on the controller. You'll also see the 8 different screws around the controller, and you would think that these screws are actually screwed down into some sort of post or standoff to secure the back panel, but that's not true. It actually surprised me. But first I have to mention is if you see the back panel, it kind of extends into the side panel there, and you can use this as a little flap that you can grab onto and open up the controller. So you get the feature of having a back panel that you can easily remove on the fly without having to unscrew anything. And if you look at the screws, this is what confused me. So these nuts are actually screwed down, obviously, to the screw, but they're not held into any part of the controller. They're just used as a sort of metallic piece that can then work with the magnet and give you that easy access backpack. So that system was honestly new to me. It kind of confused me in the beginning, but then I understood it, obviously. And now obviously you see the inside of the controller, and the first thing you'll see is the buttons and the wiring and everything. But the first thing I want to point out is this actual sort of PCB design philosophy, I guess. I've seen some Japanese controller sellers start to do this, where they design the PCB as this sort of border around the controller. So this white area that you see all around the controller is the actual main PCB. And the reason they design it like this is so that you have as much space in the middle for your button layout, which I think is pretty smart, but it's definitely very different. Normally you see an actual sort of more standardized PCB design, but this is definitely, I think, something good, and it helps sort of conserve space as much as possible, keep the controller as thin as possible while still not sacrificing too much space for the buttons. You'll see actually the chips over here. These are the chips for the main PCB. And if you look closely, you will see some connecting lines to the different other parts of the PCB. This green PCB in the USB here is your PS5 authentication dongle. And this is what I was talking about in the customization page, that you can actually use your own authentication dongle. At least I believe so. So I believe that if you buy the PC version of this controller, it'll be pretty much the same PCB design. It just won't come with this authentication dongle pre-installed. The blue PCB up top is just the display that you saw on the front panel. You obviously have your two USB-C ports, and that's about it for the PCB. The rest is this kind of pretty neat system that they have for the buttons. So to keep the buttons as flat as possible, they actually don't have the two terminals sticking out. They just use a 2-pin, very small JST connector on the button PCBs. And they use the same type of connector over here for the main PCB. And I like the system. It makes it look cleaner. It also makes it easier to work with. You know, you only have sort of what turns into essentially one wire to work with per button. And again, it also conserves a lot of space. But so just to conclude, I mean, I love pretty much everything about the controller. I think the design is sleek. I think the build quality is good. The buttons are comfortable even in their default layout, and if I don't like the buttons, I can customize the button cap and the keyboard switch. I talked to plenty about customizing your button layout, so that should never be a problem. And it's a controller that I'm really happy about. I'm really happy about this purchase. I was previously using a Hot 42 controller, which was great. I didn't have major complaints about it, but this is definitely like a step above. It definitely feels nicer. I rate it highly. I think it's almost a perfect controller. I just wish if you could swap the artwork a little bit more easily or at all. I feel like the default configuration gives you the black frosted plexi, where the black color is actually printed onto the plexi. So I'm not sure about that, but maybe they eventually add an artwork customization option. That is definitely the #1 thing I would like to see. But even without having that, this controller to me is like a solid 9.5 out of 10. And I would highly recommend you guys to either check out the controller or just check out TikiTaka in general, because surely they have some sort of model that interests you. They were one of the first leverless makers to start making split layouts for the flat style leverlesses, those that are very, very thin. And the new model as well looks really good. So I think they'll keep innovating. They'll keep making controllers. So definitely watch out for them, because they might make your next favorite controller.